Welcome everyone to my channel. Today I have a collection of a few real-life encounters for you to enjoy. The first two are downright scary ones. I'm not sure how I would have handled either situation myself, but I think they were smart in how they handled it all. The third one is more obscure, but I believe this sort of thing happens to a lot of people, and they just can't find the answers as to why certain things happen, or they don't want to know the answers. You'll hear what I mean in a few minutes. Anyway, if you have an encounter you'd like to share, please send it to my email in the description. Don't forget to subscribe, share, give this video a thumbs up, and hit the notification bell so you'll know right when a new story is uploaded. This happened to me in 1992. We were camping at the base of Flattop Mountain, a little west of an Indian burial ground. Back then, this land was open, free, not invaded by man. No one could be seen for miles around. As a child, my family would camp for a 1 to 2 week stretch completely off-grid. That was also the case during this trip. This particular time, my cousin Jason joined us. We had been out there enjoying the area, relaxing, and having fun for about a week when what I'm about to tell you occurred. I should note that my cousin and I had been riding our dirt bikes most of the day just before this happened. Late that night, myself, my parents, and my cousin were enjoying a nice campfire. Suddenly, out of nowhere it seems, mice started running through our campsite. And I mean a lot of mice. It was crazy. My dad was even having to flick them away from us with sticks. As horrendous as that sounds, we actually found humor in the situation. Well, our humor and joy changed to fear just moments later. Out of the darkness came rocks, large and small, landing all around us at various spots. Someone, or something, was throwing these rocks at us. My dad got up and said, "Okay, boys, that's enough. What the heck is going on?" None of us had any clue why this was happening, or even really what was happening. We just knew that it was happening to us. As 12 and 14-year-old boys, we were scared by what was taking place. But our fear deepened to terror as a blood-curdling scream came out from the bushes just past the darkness surrounding us. It sounded like a woman screaming as if she were being murdered. That horrific sound filled the air. It was deeply terrifying for all four of us. We made a break to get back to our camper. My dad armed himself and took a flashlight and investigated cautiously the source of what was doing this to us. He was scared too. His face was nearly white as a ghost. I think as a kid, when you see your father, your strong, seemingly indestructible protector, look so helpless and frightened, you know the situation is real and serious. I was in tears begging my dad for us to just go. Get in your truck and get us out of here is all I wanted. Unfortunately, getting out of the backwoods at that time of night, with whatever or whoever was still there, was not a good option, and I think my father knew that. So we hunkered down in the trailer, doors locked, gun loaded, until daylight. My dad searched in the morning light but found no evidence of an animal being killed or even one in distress. Absolutely nothing. My dad was the one who determined that it must have been Bigfoot. Perhaps we upset them by our riding dirt bikes that day. We would never know. Some people would say that it sounded like a cougar scream, but that doesn't explain the incredible amount of mice everywhere that flooded through the camp, or the size and amount of rocks that flew through the air at us. It's all pointing to one thing. You can decide for yourself what you think that was. I have passed this story on to my children, and have taken them to the area this took place. My cousin Jason still speaks of this as well. All of us get goosebumps still to this day when we talk about it. The memory of that will never be forgotten. I will never forget the curiosity, the anxiety, and the sheer terror that sleepless night gave me. That area all around there still amazes me and intrigues me. The connection to the land and the history of it will forever live inside me. I am always listening and searching for the elusive creature that did that to us every time I go back. I will always believe. My encounter happened when I was 14, maybe 15. I'm not sure. I did not have my driver's license at the time. I grew up in a little town north of Youngstown, Ohio, called Vienna. Now we're going back a few years because I'm 63 now, but in my mind's eye, it's crystal clear. A friend of mine, we'll call him PL, and myself were squirrel hunting. We had gone to an area we had visited many times. It wasn't the best location, but we could relax in the area and smoke our cigarettes. On this day, while we were chilling and smoking, there was a huge, loud noise. It sounded as if a tree had been snapped in two. PL and I looked at each other and both said, "What the heck was that?" I know my face showed as much concern and fear as PL's. Shortly after the noise, we decided it was time to head home. I'm telling you, there was an overwhelming feeling of being watched, and we were both feeling very uneasy. Needless to say, we started home. In the path to the house, about 75 yards from where we heard the noise, there was a very large beech tree down, and it completely blocked the path. The tree had been down for a few years, so whenever we would cross it, I would give PL my gun. I would crawl over it, then PL would give me both guns as he would crawl over. On this day, as we approached the beech tree, I handed PL my gun and began to crawl over. But before I was over, PL jumped over the tree with a gun in each hand. I looked at PL and he was very unnerved. PL said, "Did you see it?" I said, "See what?" as I reached for my gun. PL had a grip on my gun and would not let it go. Again, he said, "Did you see it?" I said, "See what?" Again, tugging on my gun. PL finally released my gun and said again, "Did you see it?" I asked again, "See what?" That's when PL regained his composure and said there was a big monkey about 7 foot tall that looked like a man. It stepped out of the woods right by PL and proceeded to step over a 4-foot property fence that separated the woods. As he or it did so, it looked directly at PL. He made several references to it being a monkey man. I had a single-shot 12-gauge shotgun, so as quickly as possible, I emptied my 6-shot squirrel shell from my gun and put in a pumpkin ball. PL followed the same, dumping out his .22 shorts onto the ground and reloading his rifle with .22 LR. At 14, we were heading up for war. We headed back to my house. Both of us were moving in circles as we would go, in an effort to keep our backs covered. We made it back to the house, both of us scared silly. We were able to regroup and tell my dad of this sighting. My dad said it sounded like Bigfoot, but was not concerned. We both wanted to call in an airstrike, but concluded that that was our 14-year-old brains thinking. Now, the strange part of this is some years later. I had a son who was about 13 or 14, and I told him this story, and he laughed, saying I was crazy. But about 6 months after my son diagnosed me as crazy, I was able to contact PL. We had dropped out of touch our senior year, as so many do. PL and I had made arrangements to meet after many years of separation. Our meeting went great. We were able to catch up on old times and tell of our lives as adults. During the first night of visiting, I asked PL if he remembered hearing the noise. Without saying another word, PL began telling my son the same story, almost word for word. Now this happened when I was about 31 years old, and I had not prompted PL on what to say. But for two people to remember the same thing so many years later has to hold some truth. Well, that's my story. I know that PL still remembers it, and I remember the look on his face still. I grew up in a somewhat remote area. What happened was long before neighbors built homes and moved in. These random happenings were over the course of about 7 years. One Sunday morning, early before the sun was really up, my dad was awoken by scratching noises just below their bedroom window. Now that might not sound like much to you, and to him, he assumed it was a buck using its antlers against the side of the house. Now, what he heard was a scratching noise. A buck would make more of a scraping noise. I should add that their bedroom windows are nearly 7 feet off the ground, and there are no large deer in our area. Now, the scratching noise could possibly be explained by a randomly tall buck. However, several months later, our dog, a German Shepherd mix, came up missing. No trace at all, as if she vanished. A while later, I found a single footprint on the ground right beside a dense tree line. It was very large and unlike anything I've seen. By this time, neighbors were starting to move in. That summer, after we returned from a vacation, there were mysterious scratch marks on the doorframe of the sliding door in my parents' living room. There was a covered deck over it, but the deck rail itself was right against the doorframe and open. So something large and tall could reach up the 8 foot from the ground to the inner doorframe to grab at the door, and that's exactly what it looked like. My dad then closed in the deck rails to solid. Sometime later, we had another smaller dog suddenly go missing, and the neighbor had a goat disappear. During this time frame, we heard one strange noise come from the forest, almost as if a howl or a whooping sound, just once, and never heard it again. It was frightening, to say the least. We decided to not have any more outside dogs after that, and our neighbor fortified his fences. This happened in the early 2000s, and since then, nothing more has occurred. These events on their own do not necessarily point to anything, but when you string them together, an odd picture forms. One I can't explain. I just know they happened. Thank all 3 of you for submitting your encounters and letting me tell your stories. Again, if anyone has an encounter or even a scary story of something that happened to them, please send me an email to the address in the description. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch everyone in the next video.